It's interesting how we've been having a theme right through these Gemaras and other Shirim, the some theme of changing situations and being able to leave behind what you've been in as you move into what you're about to go in, and how those transitions are really important, and managing the transitions. And there's so much to learn. Of course, this is all in Kodshim, and it's in the Avodah Beit Midrash. It's all specific to that. But there are principles of transition that we can learn, because we're watching that all happen. A Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur transitions 5 times from one avodah to another avodah. How does he manage that transition? And there's also just the transition of coming into the Beit HaMikdash, which we've talked about. And here we deal with it from a perspective of clothing rather than space. Yesterday we were talking about spacing, but we mentioned clothing. And today it's more about clothing. So the Mishnah on Lamed Aleph from the Beit talks about Pashat Yarad v'Taval Alav v'Nistapeg. The Kohen Gadol for his first avodah on Yom Kippur, which is the Korban Tamid, which is the regular daily Korban, he takes his weekday clothes off, he goes into the mikveh, he comes up and dries himself off. They bring him the golden begadim. They weren't all gold, but they had gold involved with them, so they're called the bigdei zahav. That's 8 items of clothing, which he wears not for the specific avodah of Yom Kippur. For that he wears the bigdei lavan, plain white clothing. But on Yom Kippur, when he's doing the regular avodot, he wears the 8 clothes as he would normally. Velavash, he wears his suit of clothing. The Kidesh Yadav V'Raglav, and then he washes his hands and feet from the Rashi says from the Kiyor. It's this washing which is what we're going to focus on. So we're told there were 5 tefillot and 10 Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. He went into the mikveh 5 times and he washed his hands and feet 10 times. So with each tefillah there were two washing of the hands. And what we're interested in here is a machloket Rabbi Meir and Chachomim further on Daf Lamed Aleph Lamed Beis about that tefillah, that Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim before the tefillah. Is that attached to the clothes he took off, or is that attached to the clothes he's putting on? Does he wash his hands? And washing hands is also part of what we're talking about, getting rid of everything that you've been attached to and preparing yourself for something different. That's part of washing your hands before a meal. To make that transition, going to a meal, that's also like an avodah. The table is like a mizbeach. So you want to transition from every day into a meal. You wash your hands before davening. Washing hands is one of the techniques we use for transitioning. So that the washing your hands before the tefillah, you're washing your hands because of the clothes you've taken off, or you're washing the hands because of the clothes that you're putting on. So the Mishnah says on Daf Lamed Daled, Kidesh Yadav V'Raglav Ufashat. We're talking about the second clothes changing on Yom Kippur. Our Mishnah here on Lamed Aleph is the first clothes changing. On Lamed Daled is the second one. And the order is he washes his hands and feet and takes off the set of clothing he was wearing, which is this set of his golden clothing. Rabbi Meir says, no, that's not the order. Pashat, he takes his clothes off and then he washes. And from that the Gemara learns, Amrua Rabbanon Kamed Rav Papa, the Rav Papa's Talmidim said to him, Had the Loka Rabbi Meir, our Mishnah can't be like Rabbi Meir, Di Rabbi Meir, Kivan Da'amad Trei Kiddusha, Alavisha Avidlahu, Hachanami Le'avad Trei Kiddusha. Since Rabbi Meir holds both washings are for what you're about to do. Just as when you wash for the meal, it's for what you're about to do. It's Hilchot Su'udah you're washing for. And you wash to daven, it's Hilchot Tfilah that you're washing for. So here too, the washing is for the suit of clothing you're about to put on. The suit of clothing you're taking off, you don't have to wash for anymore. The Chachomim say, no, even for what you've taken off, you have to wash. In that case, say the Talmidim of Rav Papa, if this Mishnah would be like Rabbi Meir, then there should be a washing here as well when he takes off his clothes. There should be at least one. So what we see here, the Rivo explains it very clearly. The Rivo says, Perish Elok Rabbanon. Our Mishnah must be like the Rabbanon. Disviru Luhu Detrei Kiddushi. That there are two. The Rabbanon hold there are 2 acts of washing hands. Chad Havi Apshita. One is for the clothes you've just taken off. Chad Havi Alavisha. And one is for the clothes you've just put on. But in our Mishnah there's only one washing hands. Why? Mishum levishat bigdei zahav she'en kodesh, because of the golden clothes he's about to put on. Aval apshita leka kiddush kiven de big day chol ninu, but he doesn't have to wash for what he's taken off because that's his ordinary weekday clothes. That there's no din kedusha. He doesn't have to do anything about that. So what do we see here? That there's two kinds of removal of clothing. The one removal of clothing is taking off your weekday clothes and putting on your Kohen uniform. Then within the avodah, there are different uniforms you use for different avodot. And that's where we see the nuances. And what we see here is both according to Rabbanan and according to Rabbi Meir, taking off your weekday clothing, that doesn't count. That you've just got to do. Why is that? Because the din is that a Kohen who's not dressed in his big day kuhuna is not a Kohen as far as avodah is concerned. He doesn't have din kuhuna as far as his avodah is concerned. So taking off your clothes before you come into the avodah to start, if a Kohen who takes off his weekday clothes comes into the Beis Hamikdash, you've got to picture it. He's dressed in his Pierre Cardin business suit or whatever it is, and he's coming to the Beis Hamikdash to do Avodas Yom Kippurim. So he's got to take off his business clothes. So he undoes his tie, he takes off his jacket, takes off his clothes. Now what does he do? He goes to the mikveh. What about washing your hands because you've just taken off your clothes? No, taking off your clothes was not part of the avodah. So what was it? So I like to think of that first taking off your clothes is like taking off your pajamas. It's not changing clothes. If you're in your business suit, if you're in your work clothes and you go to shul and you put on a special jacket for shul, that's a changing clothes. You come home and you get dressed for dinner because you're going out to dinner because you're having an important birthday party. You get dressed for dinner. That's changing clothes. But to take off your pajamas and get dressed in the morning, that's not changing the clothes. You're not mensch with your pajamas on. You're not in your work clothes. There's nothing. This is important in today's environment of Zoom. That you can't sit. You sit in front of a Zoom and you're in your pajamas. You're ois mensch. You're not even a working person. Even if it's half pajamas and the top half isn't pajamas, that's not it. You've got to be in daytime clothes. Now the question is, I'm in daytime clothes, but I'm changing what I do. I'm going from work to a social event. I'm going from a social event to shul. There should also be some kind of readjustment of how I present myself. It's not about how you look, it's about how you are. Because we're different depending on how we dress. So we use dressing as a form of calibrating our state of being. So this taking off the weekday clothes in order to come into the Beis Hamikdash, that there are no halachas applying to that at all. You've got to do that because without that it's nothing. Now you're in your Kohen clothes. When you take your one set of Kohen clothes off to put on your other set of Kohen clothes, those are the nuanced movements from one space to another, from one avodah to another, for which there needs to be not only the changing of clothes, but kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. The act of changing clothes is in itself an avodah, and not just the act of getting dressed for the avodah, like getting dressed for dinner. It's not just the getting dressed. It's the taking off the old clothes is also part of the avodah, according to the Chachomim, and that's how the Rambam paskins. That's why there has to be kiddush yadayim raglayim for the taking off of the old clothes. Because that in itself is an avodah, taking off the clothes. It's recognizing I'm not currently dressed appropriately. That's an avodah. And then you do something about it. Just that moment, we're talking about fractions of seconds of adjusting your mind to where you are and being in touch with where you are and what's around you. And we've talked about it from a time perspective, and we've talked about it from a place perspective. And now we're talking about it from a clothing perspective. It's interesting, these themes in this Gemara, which is Avodas Yom Kippurim. Who would think that it has such relevance in helping us understand how to sit in front of a computer for a Zoom meeting? But it does. There are principles of transition here. And the idea of recognizing the way I'm currently dressed and presented is not suitable for the dinner I'm going out to, or for the shir I'm going to listen to, or for the chavrusa I'm going to have, or for the davening I'm going to have, or for the sports I'm about to play, or for the beach I'm about to go to. It doesn't matter what it is. If one's doing something, recognizing I'm not appropriately dressed, that's something today is so missing. People don't even know they're not appropriately dressed. And as I say, in these Zoom days, even more so you see it. But even in real time, people don't recognize I'm not appropriately dressed, which means my mind isn't in the right place, which means my whole sense of being isn't in the right place. Because time, space, and clothing are the methods we use, and we see this throughout this part of the Masechta, we see this throughout. Time, clothing, and space are the mechanisms we use to manage transition, to be able to take us from one place to another, and to be able to adjust ourselves in the process. One of the we don't have big day kahuna. Yes, we change clothes, and now the kind of clothes has become, we've got one set of clothes for everything. And perhaps in Israel even more so than anywhere else. My wife commented the other day, "Do you notice that you don't use any clothes here?" And it is like that, because people, you kind of get dressed for whatever, and it works for everything. But that's not really a nuanced, civilized, sophisticated way of living. And there are opportunities. One doesn't want to get crazy and stupidly formal about it, but there are slight little nuances to just be able to help adjust. That I'm going into a different space. I'm going into a different activity. Imagine how your wives would feel. If women are listening, I suppose the husbands, if you're getting dressed and your wife says to you, "What are you getting dressed for?" You say, "For dinner," and she were to say to you, "But we're not going anywhere for dinner." You say, "But I'm having dinner with you. That's why I'm getting dressed." Imagine what you would feel like. Imagine what you would feel like. Imagine what the dinner would be like. So I'm not suggesting that we get dressed in tuxedos every time we have dinner, but little nuances just to manage the transitions and to show respect to other people and to show respect to oneself for what one's about to do. But the one piece that we can definitely take more care about is one new item of clothing, which can be incredibly destructive. Part of this idea of washing your hands and changing your clothes is to rid yourself of attachments to the past, of what you were involved in, so as to rid yourself of that before you become involved in something new and something different. Your cell phone has your entire history in it. It not only has your history in it, it has the history of the entire world, of human civilization in it. It's connected to every other person in the universe, and it's connected to everything that's ever happened in the world. The one thing it has nothing of is the future, except an unreliable weather forecast. It's not a future-focused thing. It's a past-focused piece of equipment. And being attached to it, carrying it around wherever we go, keeps us attached to the past. And I've demonstrated with my clients how it damages innovation. Because when you're aware of it, you're just conscious of it, you're strung, you're anchored in the past. There's absolutely no opportunity to liberate yourself into the future when one does that. So that's one item of clothing we can easily leave behind. And you know what that does to somebody else, again, a husband or a wife or a child. If you say, "I just want to turn off my phone before we have dinner. I want to turn off my phone before we sit down and talk." Your child has something, or your grandchild has something, "I want to tell you something." "Oh, just a moment, before you do that, let me turn off my phone. This is important." There are little things we can do to demonstrate readiness and to become ready. And the phone is one of the worst things in terms of keeping us in the same place all the way through the day, staying attached to everything and not freeing ourselves for what's about to happen. We're so tied into what has happened, we're not free for what's about to happen. And the phone is one thing that we can use differently and use much more effectively. So if we take that as learning from the Avodas Yom Kippurim, we're not Kohanim Gedolim, but look how we have to learn how the Kohen Gadol does his Avodah on Yom Kippurim, because there's so much we can learn from that, including how to manage transitions from space to space, from Avodah to Avodah, and from suit of clothing to suit of clothing.